Aurelia Station drifted above the storms of Mirian like a crown of glass, its endless rings glittering with the pulse of commerce, light and life. Tens of thousands of species moved through its corridors every day, humans, synthetics, reptilians, avians, all bound together by trade and fragile diplomacy. To most, it was a marvel of peace; to Lyra, it was a place of noise and masks. She walked through the crowded walkways clutching her datapad, her dark hair falling over eyes that were too bright, too reflective for human standards. She kept them low, careful never to let the truth of their golden hue show under the station's shifting neon lights. At the Stellar Academy dome, her breath fogged against the cold of the learning chambers. The room was enormous, with transparent walls revealing the raging orange clouds of Mirian below. Students floated between desks in partial gravity, chatting, teasing, showing off their wrist implants and neural links. Lyra sat alone near the edge, pretending to read about quantum linguistics, though her thoughts wandered far beyond the station, to a presence she could sometimes feel when she closed her eyes, like distant thunder pressing against her soul. The trouble began with a whisper. "Look, the off-world freak's daydreaming again." The voice belonged to a Thalcor youth, scaled and tall, with a sneer that revealed twin rows of jagged teeth. His name was Varek, son of a military governor who considered humans a lesser form of life. The other students laughed quietly, orbiting him like satellites. Lyra tried to ignore them, but her hands trembled. Varek drifted closer, his heavy boots clicking as he deactivated his grav field, dropping solidly to the floor beside her desk. "What are you staring at, little mammal?" he taunted, his slitted eyes gleaming. He reached for her datapad and snatched it away. "Do you even understand what you're reading, or do you just pretend to be smart like the rest of your kind?" The laughter rippled again, sharper this time. Lyra rose slowly, her throat dry. "Give it back." "Oh. She speaks." He circled her now, tail brushing against the floor. "You think you belong here, but you don't. You smell different. Your pulse, too fast. Your eyes, too strange." He leaned close enough for her to feel his breath. "What are you, really?" Something inside her cracked. The hum in her veins grew louder, vibrating against her ribs. She didn't understand it, but it scared her. Around her, the lights flickered, tiny motes of heat shimmered around her fingers. The laughter died as students noticed the distortion in the air, the way the gravity field fluctuated around her. "Step back," she whispered. Her voice had changed, deeper, resonant, like two tones overlapping. Varek grinned, unfazed. "Or what?" The lights above burst, showering sparks across the chamber. A deep sound, almost like a heartbeat, echoed through the walls of the station. Somewhere in the distance, a sensor alarm began to wail. Lyra clutched her head, the noise too much, the heat unbearable. She felt something ancient uncoil inside her, something vast and waiting. She gasped and, without knowing why, cried out, not in words, but in a frequency older than language, a sound that vibrated through metal and bone alike. Every system on the station blinked red for a single, impossible moment. Far beyond the stars, something stirred, a great consciousness turning its gaze toward Aurelia Station. And deep within the girl's trembling body, golden light flickered like the first breath of fire. Across the void between stars, something ancient woke. A ripple of gravitational distortion rolled through the void, bending the light of distant suns. Deep within the nebular mists of the ninth expanse, the great ship Ember's sovereign stirred from its slumber. Its hull, alive with biometallic scales, flexed as if breathing. Sensors and living circuits flared awake, and within its core, a consciousness older than most civilizations opened its eyes. Dracarian had felt the call, an impossible resonance that thrummed through the quantum layers of space itself. Only one voice could have reached him like that. He rose from the meditation chamber, his vast silhouette flickering with the faint shimmer of scales that were not entirely physical. His humanoid form towered, draped in armor that pulsed with veins of molten light. For centuries, he had silenced the dragon within, restraining the tempest that had once burned worlds. Now the whisper of his daughter's voice, raw, frightened, carrying the unique wavelength of his own soul, had shattered that silence. He extended a clawed hand, and the ship responded instantly. "Coordinate origin," he commanded. The AI core, a crystalline orb suspended in energy, spoke in the voice of his late consort, a remnant he'd never been able to delete. Signal triangulated. Aurelia Station, orbiting Mirian. The sound of her voice pierced him like an old wound reopening. He turned toward the panoramic void, where the stars trembled under the first fold of his ship's awakening engines. "Prepare a slipstream corridor," he growled softly. "Maximum output." Across the Ember Sovereign, massive energy conduits pulsed like arteries, charging the dragon ship's heart. Stellar dust ignited around it as the fabric of reality began to curl. A wormhole bloomed, golden and fierce, tearing open like a wound in the universe. As he stepped onto the bridge, the crew, mechanical sentinels forged from his own design, bowed their gleaming heads. "Destination locked," one reported. He looked out through the translucent viewport, his eyes reflecting galaxies. "She called me," he murmured, almost to himself. After all these years, she remembered. The ship plunged into the slipstream. Space warped, time blurred, and Dracarian's thoughts drifted to the last time he had seen her. A small infant swaddled in the arms of a dying human woman. He had sworn then to stay away, to let the child grow free from the shadow of his war-torn name. But now her cry had pierced even the fabric of his exile. The oath of restraint he had forged in solitude began to tremble. As the Ember Sovereign broke into real space near Aurelia Station, the local defense grid went mad. Thousands of alerts blared through communication channels. Pilots screamed across encrypted frequencies as they witnessed a shape blotting out the stars, a dragon the size of a moon, its wings woven from plasma and steel. Dracarian stood motionless, watching the tiny orbital city spinning below. For a heartbeat, he considered holding back, cloaking himself in silence. But then he heard the faint echo of his daughter's fear again, carried not through air, but through the energy web connecting all things. His pupils narrowed to slits of fire. The restraint he had carried for eons burned away like dust. The void filled with his voice, vast and thunderous, as he spoke a single word that resonated across every channel, every system, every mind tuned to the stars. "Lyra." The first tremor struck Aurelia Station like a heartbeat from the void. Gravity flickered, lights dimmed, and for a single instant, everyone felt the air grow heavier, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Then the alarms began. Security drones flooded the corridors, holographic warnings pulsed across every display, and the automated voice of Central Command repeated one phrase, "Unidentified cosmic entity approaching. All vessels evacuate orbit." Through the observation dome, the stars seemed to twist, collapsing inward around a single point of burning light. And from that distortion emerged a shape so vast it blotted out the gas giant below. It wasn't a ship, not in the sense anyone on the station could understand. It was alive. Its surface rippled like molten metal, and its wings unfolded in arcs of fire that spanned kilometers. The dragon in the dark. Lyra stood at the academy window, her classmates frozen beside her. The sight pulled her heart into her throat. She didn't know why, but something in her blood answered. The heat that had terrified her earlier now surged again, but this time it didn't hurt, it pulsed in rhythm with the creature above. The air around her shimmered faintly. Across the command deck, the station's governor shouted orders to fire interceptors, to activate the defense grid. None of it mattered. The plasma cannons that powered up across the orbital ring simply went dark, one by one, as the dragon's shadow passed over them. Communication frequencies filled with static, then cleared, replaced by a voice that didn't come from speakers, but from the space between atoms themselves. "You have harmed my blood." Every creature on the station heard it in their own language, felt it in their bones. The Thalcor students fell to their knees. The bully, Varric, trembled as the heat intensified, his reptilian scales glowing faintly in the rising temperature. The dragon began to descend, wings folding in slow, deliberate movements that distorted gravity itself. The lower rings of the station groaned under the pressure, their structural fields bending as if forced to kneel. Lyra's pulse raced, the sound of her heartbeat merging with the deep vibration shaking the walls. She could feel him now, his mind brushing against hers, immense and ancient, yet strangely tender. Then, through the chaos, came a ripple of light. The dragon's form shifted, collapsing inward into a storm of glowing fragments. They swirled, condensed, and materialized on the station's surface as a towering humanoid figure wreathed in fire and metal. His eyes burned like suns, but when they met Lyra's, the inferno softened. He reached out, and the temperature in the room dropped from searing heat to a calm warmth that felt like memory. The guards raised their weapons. "Don't shoot," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. The dragon's gaze drifted to Varek, who stood paralyzed near the shattered desks. "Is this the one?" His voice resonated like the shifting of tectonic plates. Lyra swallowed hard, tears welling as she nodded faintly. The ground cracked under the dragon's step. One more movement, and the entire station would have melted. But before his hand could close, Lyra whispered again, soft, almost pleading. "Please, don't." The dragon paused. The silence that followed was heavier than sound itself. Then, impossibly, the great warlord lowered his arm. Fire dimmed to ember. For the first time in centuries, the destroyer obeyed not his rage, but the fragile voice of mercy that came from his daughter's heart. The room smelled of ozone and fear. The air shimmered with residual heat, every molecule vibrating as if unsure whether to stay solid or flee. The towering figure stood motionless in the center of the ruined hall, his obsidian armor steaming, his eyes dimmed from suns to smoldering coals. Around him, students and guards knelt instinctively, not out of reverence, but because gravity itself seemed to bow in his presence. Dracarian's shadow flickered across the walls, an echo of wings unfurled in another dimension. Lyra stood inches away from him, her body trembling, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum calling from some ancient battlefield. She didn't understand how she knew him, yet every fiber of her being recognized the rhythm of his pulse, the frequency of his breath. He was part of her, and she of him. The realization frightened her more than the fire. Varek, the bully who had mocked her hours ago, lay frozen on the ground, his scaled hands shaking. His defiance had evaporated, replaced by the primal terror of a prey creature cornered by something beyond comprehension. Dracarian turned toward him, each movement deliberate, immense. His voice came not from his throat but from the structure around them, resonating through metal, glass, and bone. "You struck the blood of my line." Varek tried to speak, but his voice was a broken rasp. I didn't know." "There are no excuses before cosmic law," Dracarian thundered. His eyes flared again, molten gold spilling from their corners like liquid sunlight. The floor beneath Varek blackened, atoms trembling under the weight of the dragon's rage. Lyra moved before she could think, stepping between them. The temperature dropped instantly, a pulse of energy rippling outward from her small frame. Dracarian stopped, his fire sputtering mid-breath. His gaze, once terrible, now faltered. "Move aside, child," he said softly, though the power in his words could have leveled a city. She looked up at him, tears streaking her face, reflecting his light. "If you destroy him, you destroy me too." Dracarian's jaw tightened. For a moment, the old part of him, the conqueror, the warlord, the beast who had burned empires, rose again. His hand, large enough to eclipse her entirely, hovered above her head. But then he saw the tremor in her shoulders, the courage in her fear. His fingers unclenched. "You would defend the one who harmed you?" Lyra nodded, voice trembling but clear. "Because if I don't, I become what they think I am, a monster." The silence that followed stretched like eternity. Then, slowly, Dracarian bent one knee and knelt before her. The armor plates across his chest folded back, revealing faint lines of living light beneath. Then today, he murmured, his voice suddenly human, you teach the dragon restraint. He turned his hand, and the flames receded into nothingness. The burn marks on the floor cooled, the air steadied. Varric collapsed in a heap, gasping, but alive. Outside, the alarms ceased. The station's trembling structure began to stabilize as gravitational distortions withdrew. Through the shattered dome above, the gas giant storms glowed softly, no longer reflecting wrath, but calm. Dracarion rose again, towering yet serene. He looked at his daughter one last time before saying, almost to himself, perhaps mercy is the truest form of power. And for the first time in its long history, Aurelia Station felt the presence of a god, and survived it not by fear, but by grace. Silence swept through Aurelia Station after the storm. The fires had faded, yet the air still held the memory of heat. People moved cautiously, whispering the same word, *dragon*, as if saying it too loud might summon him again. But Dracarion had not left. He stood upon the observation platform, watching the gas giant's swirling colors, his massive form wrapped in a cloak of shifting light. Around him, the air shimmered faintly, bent by the gravitational field that clung to his presence. Every time he exhaled, the station's atmosphere trembled. Lyra approached quietly, her small reflection rippling in the transparent alloy walls. For the first time since his arrival, she saw him not as a god, but as a father, tired, immense, and uncertain. "You didn't destroy them," she said softly. "You could have, but you didn't." He turned slowly, the faint golden glow in his eyes dimming to a warm amber. "I came prepared to burn worlds," he admitted. "And yet, when I saw you, I remembered what fire was meant to do. Not consume, but protect." He lifted his hand and opened his palm. In it, a spark hovered, a tiny sphere of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. "This is a fragment of my essence," he said. "Not my flame, but its echo. It will shield you when I cannot. But more than that, it will let you feel the truth of what you are." Lyra hesitated, then reached out. The sphere dissolved against her skin, merging into her veins. A surge of warmth filled her body, spreading through every nerve. The metal around them hummed in resonance with her pulse. When she opened her eyes again, they shone faintly, not in fury, but in calm radiance. "What did you do to me?" she whispered. "I gave you what mortals fear most, awareness," Dracarion replied. "You will see the web that binds all things. Life, energy, emotion. You will feel how one thought can ripple across galaxies. It is both gift and burden." As if to prove his words, the station's internal lights flickered in sync with her heartbeat. Across the city, people paused, sensing a strange tranquility wash over them. Even the Thalcor who had once mocked her felt their anger fade, replaced by confusion, even shame. Lyra looked down at her hands. "It's beautiful. But it feels heavy." "It should," he said. "Power without weight is corruption." Behind them, holographic transmissions blinked to life, messages from across the system. Governments, guilds, even rebel fleets were sending the same inquiry. Who is she? Rumors were already spreading of a being who had calmed the dragon, who could quiet storms with a glance. Dracarion watched the data streams forming around them. "They will come for you, Lyra. Some to worship. Some to use. Others to destroy what they don't understand. Then what should I do?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Learn to stand between creation and chaos, and let neither define you. You are no longer only my daughter, you are balance." He turned toward the void, his immense wings beginning to unfold once more. "I will return to the nebula. The galaxy will think I slumber again. But I will be watching." Lyra's voice caught in her throat. "You're leaving?" He smiled faintly, a rare, almost human expression. "The fire must go where it is needed most." And as he stepped into the light, his form dissolved into 1,000 fragments that ascended into the stars, each one pulsing in rhythm with her heart, as if the bond between them had simply changed shape, not broken. Years passed, and Aurelia Station transformed from a place of fear into a symbol of unity. The legend of the dragon's daughter spread faster than any fleet could travel. From the frozen moons of Viral to the crystalline cities of the Falcor Dominion, stories told of the girl who faced down a god and taught him mercy. Lyra had grown into her inheritance. Not as a ruler, but as a bridge between species that once could not speak without reaching for weapons. The gift her father left within her had evolved, glowing softly beneath her skin, a living current that could calm storms, mend gravity fractures, even still the pulse of warship's reactors when hatred flared too brightly. Now she stood once more under the great dome of the Stellar Council, the same hall that had once trembled before her father's shadow. The chamber was rebuilt, wider and stronger, its walls etched with constellations representing every known civilization. Delegates filled the tiers, humans, Falcor, androids, avians, each waiting for her to speak. And beside her, to everyone's quiet astonishment, stood Varek. No longer the arrogant youth who once tormented her, he bore the silver crest of a peace envoy. His voice, when he addressed her, was steady but reverent. They listen to you now because they believe you're divine. But what they truly need is proof that divinity can choose to be human. Lyra smiled faintly. Then that is what they will see. She stepped forward and raised her hand. The chamber lights dimmed as her energy radiated outward, forming a slow spiral of luminescent threads. Within that spiral appeared an image of the galaxy, every system, every star, connected by living veins of light. My father once taught me that destruction is easy, she said. Creation requires restraint. Power without empathy is only another form of chaos. Her gaze swept across the assembly. If we are to survive, we must see each other not as prey or rivals, but as echoes of the same flame. As she spoke, the air trembled. Somewhere deep in the cosmos, a familiar resonance answered. A golden shimmer appeared beyond the dome, faint but unmistakable, a massive, spectral silhouette of wings stretching across the stars. No one but Lyra heard the low, rumbling voice that followed, "You have learned, my child." Her chest tightened with emotion. "And I will keep learning," she whispered. Outside the station, the storm belts of Mirian parted, revealing the calm eye of the gas giant below. The entire planet seemed to glow as if reflecting her pulse. For the first time in recorded history, the council voted unanimously, for peace, for shared defense, for cooperation. When the session ended, Lyra lingered by the observation glass. The faint afterimage of wings dissolved into the stars, leaving only trails of gold dust that drifted like embers. She touched the glass, her reflection merging with the cosmos. "Goodbye, father," she said softly. "Your fire still burns." And somewhere beyond the nebulae, where dragons slept in silence, Dracarian smiled in the darkness, his heart at last unburdened, his legacy carried not by war, but by the quiet light of his daughter's mercy.